focusing on being WordPress for the Internet of Things. And if you just think about the economics of app installs, it's like $4 per install or so, the acquisition cost. I think that in itself tells you if you need an app or not. If you have millions of customers, just do the math. I think it's perfectly obvious that apps will not scale well for most brands on the planet. Retargeting has been doing wonders for e-commerce, and we just want to offer a simple tool for businesses to expand that into their brick-and-mortar establishments. Beacon notifications will be in their Omni box, where you type the URL in, on Chrome for Android and Chrome for iOS as well. Once they do that, it's basically going to be very challenging for anybody to miss a beacon.
You're listening to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Ecosystem with Steve Statler.
Welcome to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Ecosystem. My name is Steve Statler of Statler Consulting, and this time we are talking with Ferenc Brachmann, who is the CEO of Beeem, and he's currently based in Hungary. Ferenc, welcome to the show.
Hi there, welcome.
So I'm excited to have you on because this gives us a great excuse to talk about the physical web again. And we spoke to Scott Jensen a couple of months ago, but we haven't really talked about it since. So today what we will do is talk a little bit about the product opportunities or what's required to make the most of physical web, because you could argue that you don't need anything if you're basically creating web pages. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, you've been running a company that's been focused on physical web, so love to pick your brains in terms of the lessons that you've learned. And then let's just talk about the state of the market, and that's something that's always interesting for everyone that's a stakeholder. So sound okay?
Yeah, cool. So basically, we're focusing on being WordPress for the Internet of Things. Right now, IoT is mostly beacons. The concept of the physical web actually kind of slightly expands that and makes you aware of the fact that this is going to be, advertising, URL advertising is going to be on the Wi-Fi stack as well, with Wi-Fi Aware and Wi-Fi Halo. And we also think that Bluetooth beacons are going to be so inexpensive and purely down to Moore's law that these devices that can broadcast URLs are going to be so inexpensive very soon that actually you'll be seeing them in packaging in all sorts of areas right now that are not in the focus of the physical web in the short term. But this is probably going to majorly affect most business scenarios in the consumer-facing IoT. So basically what we're focusing on is to provide value to businesses to enable them to engage anyone around through the appless approach of the physical web, which even though it's appless, it doesn't mean that it doesn't create challenges for any business. If you want to have a landing page that appears on a smartphone with a physical web notification, you need an HTTPS certificate. You need to pass a lot of technical stuff. I don't want to go into detail, but we spend an incredible amount of time actually reverse engineering Google's crawlers on how they crawl, how often do they crawl when you change something. You change the title or the description, for example, or change the logo on your landing page. How does that get recrawled? When will that appear? How long does that get to be cached? Things like that. So there's a lot of things to do. Also, because it's appless, that means that it's the web. And if you have large volumes of people at live events, festivals and trade shows come into mind, then you're going to have in this scenario, you'll have tens to hundreds of thousands of page views per hour. How do you create the capacities for the short term for that particular load? How do you serve terabytes of data for your physical web experience and provide a quick engagement opportunity? You need a service. And basically, we've come to the conclusion that this whole IoT thing is going to require the web as an application platform, and mostly because of the scaling challenges that have been well documented. If you just think of any Scott Jensen talk on YouTube, you can easily look into this. There's a lot of scaling problems with app-based approaches in IoT. And we wanted to focus on a service that any business could use to engage their visitors or customers in most scenarios. Even right now, we're focusing on places. This is, I think, where IoT starts, but later on, it's going to be product labeling, any sort of retail scenario. I think that even the pill bottle example is a great thing. I mean, you're taking out a piece of paper and trying to read an instruction manual in your language. Well, that's probably not a problem in the States, but in Europe, you have multi-language descriptions. And it's just not interactive, it's not quick, and also beacons also create an incredible opportunity for businesses to measure their own activities or their customer interactions to details that have not been possible before. And that just adds customer value, and it also adds a lot of value to the business itself. So that's what we focus on in a nutshell. And right now, this is a landing page service for any business to engage their customers or visitors.
Cool. So WordPress for the physical web, and you're dealing with scaling issues. You've done some studying of the crawler. Presumably, you've looked at the proxy that has been built for Google, which is kind of the front end. Maybe let's come back to the offering a little bit later. But before we go any further, just remind us why. Why do you think the physical web is going to be successful? Why do we need the physical web? You've touched a bit on, hey, I can have messages coming from pill bottles and potentially from appliances, but just give us kind of the recap of why the physical web.
Well, to quote Scott Jensen, apps don't scale well. They cost a lot of money to produce and a lot of time to develop. Basically, those are the two main factors that prohibit the scaling of IoT use cases. For the pill bottle example, you really don't need the pharmaceutical manufacturer. You just need some simple information, and it's just that is one of the reasons the web became what it is on desktop. Mm-hmm. And we are just that certain that the exact same thing will happen with mobile. And the reason apps became popular at the first stage of smartphones is because the CPUs weren't energy efficient enough. So it's basically Moore's law repeating itself. Mm-hmm. You're never using a desktop email client right now. Everybody uses some browser-based email clients, and the same thing will happen with mobile. And also, with the Internet of Things, that this actually multiplies because you're using 20 pieces of software on your desktop computer or laptop computer, but you'll be in interaction with hundreds, if not thousands, of places and products and devices every month. So this presents even bigger scaling issues than it was in desktop computing in the 5 to 10 years ago.
So it seems to me the logic for this is compelling. It's lower cost. You can do so much of what you can do in an app for 2 orders of magnitude less on the web.
Correct.
and the scalability piece all makes sense. But we've got this chicken and egg thing, and it's taken a decade or so, but basically most brands now feel like they need an app, and they've almost we need to re-educate them that the physical web can be an option as well. And I think this is really appealing for people that aren't like McDonald's. If you're McDonald's, then you can do everything. But if you're below that level, then there's major costs and opportunity costs that the physical web can open up.
Actually, I think that besides NBA and Major League Baseball teams, probably the only brand that has significant app penetration is actually Starbucks. And even I would challenge you on the McDonald's example. If you look at their app penetration, it's just a few percentage points of their total customer base. Mm-hmm. And they can do everything, and they still don't get the results. And if you look at Taco Bell, Burger King, anybody who's competing with them, they have even lower numbers. So, and if you just think about the economics of app installs, it's like $4 per install or so. Mm-hmm. The acquisition cost. I think that in itself tells you if you need an app or not. Mm-hmm. If you have millions of customers, just do the math. I think it's perfectly obvious that apps will not scale well for most brands on the planet, let alone for small and mid-sized businesses. The scaling issues here are not just on getting people to download the app. It's then how do you manage the IoT solution? Let me give you an example. Starbucks has about 50,000 locations globally, I think. In the Internet of Things, right now they have about 30 websites globally. In the Internet of Things, they'll have web stores or web-based physical web stores for every single one of their locations. And it's been reported, Starbucks prototyped a few locations where they allowed pre-ordering of their beverages through the app, but couldn't link it to the inventory, and people did not get their orders. So it's actually the other big possibility for the physical web is actually the major global brands that need something that's easily interchangeable and interoperable with their existing systems. And actually, we've been very conscious of this, and we actually allow our customers to embed their backend systems into their Beacon landing pages. So if you have a back office or a backend system you want to integrate into your Beam landing page, you can easily do that with a simple tool. So you can even custom develop your own backend and just tie it into the landing page easily.
So you have this ability to be more context specific with the content in a way that might be challenging in an app. And I think your point about the lack of success and mass adoption of apps is a good one. It's just a real gamble as to whether your app is going to get adoption. At the moment, it doesn't. The odds don't favor the retailers in that gamble. But basically, very few people are using the physical web, aren't they? That's the thing. It's a great idea, but no one's using it. What gives you optimism that they will start using it?
Google Play Services has taken over from the Chrome browser on Android, and it's been hinted by Google at several places that actually Beacon notifications will be in their Omnibox. There, where you type the URL in. On Chrome for Android and Chrome for iOS as well. Mm-hmm. Once they do that, it's basically going to be very challenging for anybody to miss a beacon. Right now, actually, the onboarding for the physical web is not too easy, as the Chrome for iOS widget is not something that people easily onboard to. But we're confident that Google will figure this out. It's not it's not brain surgery. It's pretty simple UX. I'm certain that the teams there will do a good enough job soon enough. I think that the reason people have not adopted massively to the physical web is because Google is incredibly slow placed at this, because they want to make sure that this does not turn into a spamming platform. And that's we support that 100%. We don't want this to be, overly offensive to people. Google certainly does not want this to happen, and they'll just need a few extra months to figure this out.
Well, I was encouraged the other day. I was in a pub here in San Diego talking to someone about something, nothing to do with beacons, and they just asked, how do you earn your living? And I talked about beacons, and someone who was at the table listening in on our conversation said, oh yeah, the physical web. We hadn't talked about physical web. We just talked about beacons. And they said, oh, physical web. Yeah, I was in a jewelry store the other day and they had the physical web page. And that actually, just my head almost spun when I heard that. It's anecdotal, but it just gave me a little jolt of optimism that was overdue. Let's go back to your offering. So I want to tell us a bit more about, you talked about being WordPress for the physical web. Why can't I use WordPress for the physical web? And because that allows me to create mobile pages, and I can get hosting that scales. What else is there to be done?
Well, what we realized with the physical web, that actually if you want to have this hyper-local instant interaction, that is actually completely different from a mobile website. I was actually talking to an American beacon manufacturer a few months back, and he gave this description that one of their customers has a website. They even have a mobile website, but what they would want to have on the physical web is actually incredibly relevant to just a single point, a single location. So just to continue on with the Starbucks example, in that case, that is going to be ordering and payment for that exact store at that exact location at that exact time. The coupons or the promotion that you want to have there and then. And that's basically what we add to a CMS is timing. We enable you to create cards, place them on a time scale. Basically, it's a calendar, and you can actually time any content and interaction piece accordingly. This might be, your morning menu at McDonald's or a coupon that's only available in certain hours. But it can also be your presentation at a conference for just the time being of your talk, or a Q&A for the last 5 minutes. That is not a mobile landing page or a mobile web page. That's actually something for then and there. That actually we think requires a different approach, and that's why we developed a specialized tool for it.
Okay, and so it's the context specificity it's those hooks for adding context that are key. So, you've been getting some good experience. Can you give us tell us about a case study, or what can you tell us from your lessons learned?
Well, 2 weeks ago, we just wrapped up the Table Tennis European Championships. We provided live scores on mobile and player bios for all the players who were at the tables at the given matches. that was the main interaction environment we wanted to have. We covered the main hall of the stadium and the beacon for every table. There were a maximum of 8 tables that were present during qualifying matches. And obviously, as the tournament progressed, it got down to a single table. And then we used the beacons to broadcast the live scores on mobile and the player bios accordingly. Mm-hmm. But just an interesting add-on to your question is, why would this be relevant for any business? And I think that this is also something that needs to be better understood by potential customers, is that with the Beeem landing pages, you are able to embed your Facebook pixel tracking code and your Google AdWords remarketing tag natively to these landing pages. So you can basically build your custom audiences from the people who you engaged at your live events. And actually that's what we are looking into with the ITTF, the International Table Tennis Federation right now, is how to do a year-round deployment of all of their major events and getting to know their live event visitors much better. And, you know, retargeting has been doing wonders for e-commerce, and we just want to offer a simple tool for businesses to expand that into their brick and mortar establishments. Mm-hmm. Basically that's one of, that's a business driver that can can enhance beacon adoption. Is that, beacons are not for themselves in this sense. So that's actually retargeting, we think, can drive massive beacon adoption because it can really add business value to any potential client.
That makes sense. So did you get a sense of the adoption at the table tennis tournament?
Yeah, I cannot talk about specific numbers as I'm under an NDA. I can give ballpark estimates.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that or if any of you know that, but in Europe, iOS penetration is much lower than in the States. It's hovering about 10%. We actually got somewhat lower numbers, but still significant iOS usage, which was actually pretty encouraging. Android use is above 90%, and we experienced about the same. It was interesting to see that there was a lot of Android 6 users. So actually, that is actually above the global Android stats that we have. So actually, I would have thought that Europe has, more Android 6 users than the global stats, but actually there has been a lot of encouraging data on that. Total engagement numbers were, the ballpark estimate I can give is between 15 and 40% of the daily visitors. Actually, yeah, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Even though this was the week where physical web notifications were moved from Google Play services back to Chrome. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've read about it, but beacon notifications were turned off in Google Play services due to a bug in the GSM core, Google Messaging Services core. Mm-hmm. And they'll be turned back on once the new version of Google Play services is launched.
Okay, so that was happening right in the middle of your tournament. That made it fun. And what did you do to make people aware of the fact that there was this physical web opportunity?
We did a LED wall video that would make people understand that they need to have the physical web app and turning Bluetooth on. And we also did some brick and mortar signage of how to onboard. And also the speaker was instructed to continually repeat the onboarding message
All right.
during the tournament. Actually, come to think of it, we should have had more. We should have had more of this. And you probably cannot get enough of that. But the real trick here is to have some mobile exclusive customer value.
Uh-huh.
So actually, that's one of the things we're working on with the International Table Tennis Federation, is to have some sort of social game or some sort of table tennis specific tool that will allow them to engage the spectators at any event. And that's actually, I think that probably NBA and baseball teams also focus on these sort of things. I would imagine that doing a lot of this does wonders for your penetration numbers, because people, table tennis is an incredibly fast-paced sport, so we weren't expecting a lot. And actually, I think that with other sports, like we're talking to some businesses in the athletics business. Athletics would require probably a lot less onboarding messages, because the live scoring is just so much more important in a stadium where anywhere from up to a dozen things are happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you're basically competing with screen real estate live at the stadium, and that's if the stadium has a lot of screen real estate, it makes it challenging. If it doesn't have a lot, like open air stadiums, mm-hmm. then it's much more easy to onboard, I think.
Oh, that's a really interesting observation about that can add some real value. Any other things? Any other lessons learned? Any things that you would do differently?
No, probably. I would have consulted Google before, probably, because we really had a couple of all-nighters because of the changes mm-hmm. of reverting back to Chrome. Because the Chrome version of that did the beacon notifications again, rolled out on the second day of match activities. And we thought that it was going to roll out to phones in Hungary as well, but it only rolled out on the next Monday after the event. So we did the brick and mortar signage twice, because we thought we need to instruct people to use Chrome, and then we realized we needed to instruct people to download the physical web app.
Oh my goodness!
So that pushed a couple of all-nighters, but we were at the point of no return for the deal by the time we learned of this thing happening, because it was less than a week before the event. Okay. And we couldn't get enough information from Google. But we don't expect, and actually I'm not really worried about all the backend services, because the rigorous testing that Google does with Google Play services is going to, continue to produce high quality software. And I don't expect this to ever happen again.
Cool. Well, let's two last questions before we wrap up. One is, we've been talking about what you've been doing. Any thoughts about other players in the physical web market? What are you seeing that interests you?
Well, there are a few companies who are, I think, following the same line of thought mm-hmm. of physical web, that you do require a different CMS, and WordPress is not going to satisfy your needs. We really encourage competition in this sense, because there's still a lot of innovation that needs to happen before massive adoption happens. And just to give you another example, we also have a zero configuration Eddystone beacon technology that allows you to set a custom forwarder to a beacon, and then you can program that forwarder inside Beeem.
Okay.
So that basically allows you can buy or pre-program these beacons yourself, or you can buy beacons from us. And then you can start editing the landing pages for those beacons while the beacons are in shipping to you. And then all you need to do is turn the beacons on and you're good to go. So that completely seamless and completely programming free flow has to develop, and there has to be several players for this to really encourage. Competition needs to be upkept so innovation can thrive.
Well, and it seems like most of the big beacon players now support it. I think the latest Proxbook Q3 report said that 50% of the beacon providers do, but you look at the big guys and they all do. So there's no issues there that I can see. So that's good.
Yeah, and if you think about the kind of numbers that Google Play Services has or Chrome for iOS has, you're capable of reaching over 1 billion smartphones with Bluetooth on. And one other thing to add here is Google's measuring about 65% of smartphones with Bluetooth turned on all the time, and it grew 15% the last year. So I think we can expect to get somewhere around 80% within a year's time. So finally, whenever we go to sales meetings, we won't have to talk about Bluetooth being turned on or off. Yeah,
and hopefully, the Apple headsets and just more of these IoT devices, watches, and so forth will help dispel the urban legends about battery drain and so forth.
Yeah.
So before we sign off, I've got to ask you a little bit about where you're based. So you're based in Hungary, and of course, it's American tradition that we don't take any notice of anything outside of the States. So just give us kind of our 101 on where you are in Hungary, and what's life like there as a high-tech entrepreneur?
We live just south of Budapest in a town called Pécs. Which actually has a lot of history and tradition. The first settlements were around this area around 6,000 years old, and actually the city of Pécs has existed since Roman times, even before Roman times. So there's a lot of history here, a lot of ancient buildings, and there's a vibrant university community here with thousands of foreign students and also about 30,000 Hungarian students. So it's a really lovely place to live. And actually, we're doing our best not to need to move to anywhere else because, work-life balance can actually be perfect in a small town like this. And, with the internet, you really don't need to. Nobody has time to talk anywhere else but over the internet anyways. So it's really hard, really you don't need to move. And we're doing our best to stay here as long as we can.
Well, you've lectured at the university there, which has got a really long history. It's like one of the first universities in Europe.
It was one of the first universities in Europe, yes. Was founded in the 14th century. Yeah, correct.
Amazing. Well, cool. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk. Great to hear about what's happening with the physical web. So Ferenc Brachmann, CEO of Beeem, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thanks, Steve.
So what's the music that you would take to Mars with you if you were on one of those space trips?
First album would be some Mozart. We were after we brought our newborn home, we listened to a lot of Mozart with the newborn. That kind of reminds me of the 2 weeks of not working at all, or hardly any work. It was the end of August, so I couldn't work anyway. That was really it was pure harmony.
Wonderful.
Listened to progressive metal music There's a French band called Gojira, and they have a new amazing album out called Magna. And that would be, or they have a new live album also that is just excellent. And even for, for non-metal fans, I think it's something worthwhile. Go ahead.
Did you describe it as progressive metal? What was the genre?
Yeah, that is the genre actually. I would describe this music as the direction Metallica would have continued on if they would not have become their own cover band. So basically, I don't know if I was a huge Metallica fan when I was a small child, but they just became their own cover band, and they are their own cover band basically.
As in, they just didn't progress; they were just kind of remining the same formula.
Progression, and what's also not going on is that they've made since 1991 they made 5 albums altogether that were studio albums, and they just take more and more time to produce a new album. Their new album has been in the works for 8 years now. So actually, it's really interesting. I never would have thought that. I don't even know any other French metal bands, and they're just really interesting.
Very good. And what's your third choice?
They live in New York, actually.
Wonderful. And your third choice?
There's a progressive metal band called Mastodon from California. You've heard of them?
I have heard of them. Yeah, I don't think I've ever listened to them, but I've definitely heard of them.
Even for that, I would suggest for anybody who would listen to rock music, because it's not really even metal in that sense. It's really just progressive rock music. Really, their lyrics are pretty blurred. They're not too strong, but the music itself is just great.
I'm going to listen to some Mastodon after this.
Yeah, please do.
Very good. Thanks very much.